All right, I'm here with my friends Tim and Sammy. I call him Sammy. I know he's known as Samuel. I call him Sammy, all right? Known each other since USC days. Tim, I've known you since Hyungjae days, right? Mm-hmm. This is way back in the 90s. And I actually met your wife before I met you. I met Sako because she used to choreograph hip-hop for CPR. Does CPR still happen? No? CPR. We did this dance with Kirk Franklin. Do you want a revolution? Alright, we did that song, we did that dance. Tim, you used to be a pastor at Living Hope Community Church, right? Doing college ministry.
Yes.
Sammy, you were at Paradox. Were you pastoring there at Paradox?
I was leading worship.
You were leading worship there at Paradox. Okay. And you guys were both at Talbot, right? I remember we connected there. And now you're here in Seattle, but planting in Bellevue, Washington, right? The Well Community Church. How long has it been now?
7 years.
7 years? So, dude, I thought it was like only 3 or 4.
No, we moved back the the August 2012.
Okay.
We started meeting that fall.
Okay.
But we didn't do public launch until January 2013.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Tim, I gotta ask. Let's start this off with this question.
Sure.
It's not very common for Asian Americans to plant churches. I tried to do it for 2 years, right? You're doing it now. What made you want to plant a church instead of just trying to find an associate pastor position somewhere else at another church?
The story would probably start years ago when I was serving at a church here in this area, New Life Fellowship in this area. This is many, many years ago. And I had the opportunity to start a campus ministry at University of Washington. And through that process where some leaders took a chance and just gave me the opportunity to start something new, we wanted to reach our peers. And a core team of us, very young at the time, we just started serving and sharing the gospel and doing ministry there on campus. And we saw many come to join us at that weekly gathering, many come to faith. And there was just something that God stirred my heart through that. And that was kind of the seed that was planted. And I think in my own heart, I just thought, God, if you'd call me to do something like this where we could see people reach through the gospel for your kingdom, then, Lord, I would do that if you call me to that.
Now, after Living Hope, though, because you're in college ministry there, did you know this is time for me to plant my church now after your transition out of Living Hope?
Yeah, so when we transitioned from the Northwest to Southern California, we already knew we were going to come back to the Northwest. So we went down there to be better equipped. Went to Talbot School of Theology to be better equipped, to be trained, to be at a church where we could go and grow and learn, and to be in Southern California, an area where there were many church plants, cultural diversity. So my wife and I went as students, knowing that after our time that we would come back up to the Northwest and plant. And so when we transitioned out of Living Hope, yeah, we already knew we were going to come back to the Northwest to plant a church.
Okay. And then Sammy, I remember right around that time, I was about to church plant, and I remember I was trying to recruit you. What made you think about joining a church plant versus, again, same thing, just maybe going to be a pastor at another church, things like that? Because even for you, even though Washington is your hood too, that's still like a big decision. What made you want to do that?
Yeah, I would say that a lot of it had to do with just a continual desire to be in a place where there was the greatest need, and specifically in the situation with the well, Pastor Tim and I, we ran into each other at Talbot. I've known Tim for a long time actually as well. We never really talked back in the day, but I was attending New Life Hyungjae back in the day.
Oh, you're old school Hyungjae. I remember that. Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember that.
So I was there. Yeah. So I only knew of Tim. He was leading worship and really involved, and we basically just reconnected at Talbot. So, and during that time, there was an opportunity for me to serve at Living Hope as well, and so I actually knew Pastor Steve from just they're kind of a family friend of ours, and then also Tim talked to me about serving with him. And I think, and I don't know if we haven't talked about this, but I think he was thinking long term, maybe at that point too, because we were talking about the church plant potentially coming back to Seattle, and so I think just through that time I was able to serve with Tim at Living Hope, serving in the college ministry. I was a pastoral intern at Living Hope as well. So, and and so then it just kind of, really felt like God was leading me towards coming here and joining in with just a desire to see the gospel in the city of Bellevue and beyond, and just in the Pacific Northwest. And so that was just my heart during that time. So
I know Paradox is a multi-ethnic ministry, but all of us grew up in Korean American church style since we were kids, right? Even probably all throughout college too. When you guys thinking about Asian American ministry, or even just Korean American ministry, what do you think, in your opinion, are areas of Asian American ministry in the church that maybe need some more attention and more focus? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the Asian American culture in general, I feel like there is a strong presence of community. I feel like there's an element of people spending time together, a desire to be with one another, to socialize. I would say that one of the, at least in my opinion, one of the weaknesses that I've seen is for people to actually grow deeper.
Are you talking about relationships right now?
Relationships,
Okay.
yes, yeah. To grow deeper beyond just the surface level of just what socializing does with just hanging out and spending time together, but there's an element of more spiritual growth in that sense. Because I think in a lot of ways there is this kind of affinity with just the ability for just Asian Americans to spend time together and connect really easily. I don't think that's the issue. I think the bigger issue is where do we go from here? Like, once we go beyond this point, how do we go deeper? How do we really invest in one another? How do we love one another, care for all the one another's, right? How do we encourage each other? How do we grow together spiritually? And just that deepening of a desire to be there for one another in that sense. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of where.
Yeah. What do you think, Tim?
I think for me, it's more specific with my own personal experience. So coming from the Northwest, and then spending time in Southern California for 4 years. We were down in that area for 4 years. My wife and I, my wife is Japanese American, I'm Korean American, and the Northwest ministry context was all we knew. And so when we went down to Southern California, we honestly experienced a lot of culture shock. It was completely different to us. And our whole experience just really, it was eye-opening for us. And in a positive sense, first, we never seen that many Asians everywhere at the same time, all the time. Coming from the
north. Wait, gosh, so many.
No, I mean, coming from the Northwest, we were living in the North OC area near school, and even to walk into a Starbucks, you walk into coffee shops, you walk into any public places, and you see people doing Bible studies. You can hear conversations about church. Now, obviously, being near a seminary, that may, people may just view that as, well, that's what's going to happen in that area. But for my wife and I, that's very uncommon, coming from the Seattle area. And so when we saw that, actually, for us, not only did we want to understand the culture a little bit better, but we were shocked at the term embarrassment of riches. There was just so many people that honestly seemed like they were hungry to grow. Even in the Asian American churches that we were able to connect with in Southern California, I mean, people had a desire to grow. They had a desire to know God's word better. And that was just, once again, from our experience, from my wife and I, that was just really different than what we experienced in the Northwest. And so for us to come back to the Northwest, it was something that was just confirmed in us. We want to see people that have that sort of hunger, that want to know God, love His Word, to grow in intimacy with Him, more than just connecting with others in community, which is what our experience really was heavily focused on. Just community, be in deep relationships, but just a love for God's Word, to understand, to know His Word, and to really study His Word deeply. That was something that really... at first it shocked us, it encouraged us, and that's something that we now labor to see happen here. That's where our prayers are at. We want people to know God more.
We have something unique here, us three. We grew up in Washington, so we got to experience church in Washington State, and then we got to actually experience serving in ministry, pastoral ministry, things like that in California, right? You guys are back now here in Washington. So not just comparing Washington and California, but what about just even thinking about, let's say, the last 10 to 15 years, Washington State Church. What do you guys think? What are some observations? Has it changed? Is it the same? Are churches kind of doing the same exact strategy? Is there maybe more focus on certain areas in the church that they weren't focusing back in 2000 and the 90s, things like that? As when we were growing up, you guys were growing up in Hyungja, I was growing up in Onuri, you know? What do you guys think? What are some major observations in church in Washington State?
So I would say that for me personally and what I've seen and just coming back here, one thing that I experienced just being back in Seattle was there is a huge hunger and desire for people for something far greater than themselves. So there's this element of spirituality is really big here. I feel like it's always been big, but lately, it's just I've noticed that there's been a lot more. I don't know how to word it, but just this desire to seek things beyond yourself. So, and there's an element of that I see when it comes to just our culture today. But I would say, especially in Washington, just being back here, there are just a lot of challenges that I see when it comes to just the society in general and the culture and what people view as what it means to be even a Christian. Even the emphasis around, views of just what other Christians are like. And I think a lot of my encounters with people in general, there's always been this slight hostility towards Christianity. So when I look at the church today, and I think this was one of the bigger desires of wanting to come to the well, because when I talked to Pastor Tim, there was a huge desire for people to know God's word. I think in the past, I think there were a lot more churches that were culturally sensitive, but at the same time weren't, from the pulpit at least, weren't preaching in a way that was really presenting the gospel in the fullness of what the gospel is. And there was when I came back in 2013, Mars Hill at the time was becoming really big here in Washington State. They were planning all these churches, different locations, and in a lot of ways, they brought a presence and in the sense of a Bible-believing church that was really getting big. Something that I would say in Washington State is not as common. I would say a lot of the bigger churches are it's a different style, or there's a different emphasis. But I would say that in the sense of even today, and our desire just for, just to be faithful to God's word and for people to know God's word, to know Him more, I think we need more of that. I guess it's just kind of, where I feel like there's a greater need there in that sense. So I would say there is a huge difference in that sense. I would say, of course, when I was in California, I did see a lot of this as well, but because it's just the sheer amount of people and churches on every block when I was in Orange County, here there's been a lot of movement when it comes to just churches being planted right now, but which I think is a great thing. But I think that just from what I've observed and just what I've seen, that there hasn't, in my opinion, been much shift. And once Marcel kind of broke down, I feel like there was an element of just other churches trying to come in to plant and do things like that. But I would say that's kind of one of the bigger challenges that I see when it comes to just churches here in Washington State. And honestly, for us, we just want to be faithful of what we're doing at the well. Like, we're not here to criticize other churches or anything like that. I think something that we've said about other churches especially is that there will be people that these churches will reach that we would never be able to reach, or these people would never step in, in our doors, but are able to go to this church and hear the gospel. And there's something about that where we have to look at this and Pastor Tim does this a lot, from the pulpit, is that when he prays for churches in the area. He prays for churches and not necessarily by name, but just churches that are preaching God's word, preaching the gospel. So there's a desire for us to see a strengthening of churches in the area when it comes to that, and a support. I feel like there is a, we're not here to bash people. We're not here to like talk down to people. We want to be faithful with what we do at the Well, and we want to continue to pray for and encourage, the other churches in the area. They're, like I said, they're going to reach people that we would never reach, maybe, and would never step foot in our doors. But for them to hear the gospel, we want to see people saved, and so yeah.
Right. Yeah. What do you think, Tim?
Your original question, I believe, was how has ministry changed or been the same?
Yeah, in Washington State.
Yeah, in Washington State.
Yeah.
So once again, I think from my own personal perspective, I think some things have changed. Inevitably, some things have changed, and some things on the undertone has almost stayed the same. I think in the Northwest, there are those that are working hard to get people in the door. And I don't mean that necessarily as a negative thing, but they work really hard in marketing, especially with the rise of social media. They're doing all that they can to attract people to come to their building. In the past, over 10 years ago, we didn't have social media, so we did what we could at that time with events or invite them to a special night. But now with social media, many churches have staff that just do social media. Yeah. And so there's this huge push to get bodies in the door for various different reasons. So I think that's similar. I think in the Northwest, what we're seeing is a diversity of churches, similar to anywhere else. But I think for us, being in the Northwest and Seattle area, all the way to what people would call progressive churches, or what generally speaking we would say more liberal from the Bible. And then there are those that are coming and they're more conservative as well, being planted through, like us, like North American Mission Board, and they're trying to preach the gospel, fulfilling a Great Commission. And so I think for us at the Well, we're really thinking through not only the importance of people being connected to the Well, but I think early on the conversation was, what are we inviting them to? I think churches here, they work really hard. They're shiny. They have nice buildings. They put on a good program. And, I think my heart and my prayer is that would not be the end. That they just build a weekend routine and then think that they're good with God because they come on a Sunday, put their kids in a good kids program. And, we've been in ministry long enough. We know there's a certain way of doing things. Have a good program, have a good kids program, get a good worship leader, be in a nice building. People will come, but I think the deeper question is, what are we inviting them into? Is it just relationship? Is it just common interest? Or are we trying to bring God down here? Or are we trying to have people look up to how big and great God is? That God is completely other. I think for me, there are still some, and I know years ago there was this trying to make Jesus relatable. Not that he is not, but there was so much of a focus that Jesus is your friend, he's your homeboy. And I think it's something that God's doing in my heart too, is I just learn more about God's word, and I want to continue to be a student. I think what we up here are missing is that people realize that, we serve an infinitely holy, loving, completely other God. And I think we lose that many times because we want people to come in the door. And so I just want to see people get to know God more. And I think one of the marks of that, for us, and Pastor Sam and I constantly praying, thinking through how do we better help people follow Jesus, is, I think the question is not, do we have more people coming, getting involved, attending programs, but are we seeing people become more like the scriptures say Christians should be like? Are we seeing fruit in people's lives? Are people living more like Christ? Do they have more of a biblical lens of the world? Or a biblical lens as they live life in this world? Rather than just sprinkling in a little bit of Jesus on top of their life. And they come on a Sunday, and then Monday through Friday or Monday through Saturday, they still live however they want to live. So I don't know if that completely
No,
answers
that's
your
great.
question.
No, that's good. The Well Community Church. What's the vision of the Well Community Church?
So vision, mission, different people define it differently. For us, the vision, the big picture, the goal, the ideal for us is a gospel-centered, biblically functioning community committed to the Great Commission in the spirit of the Great Commandment. So that's kind of the big picture. That's like what we're trying to do. And then the mission of how do we get there is helping people find and follow Jesus. So that's kind of the statement we repeat at our church. We are here to help people find and follow Jesus. And that's for us, pointing them to the Lord, preaching the gospel clearly, helping them to understand what it means to follow Jesus.
Awesome. And Sam, if someone comes into the well on a Sunday, what are they going to find when they walk in? What's the experience for them?
I think there is a sense of, so first of all, I think the faithfulness to God's word. I think when people walk through those doors, I feel like, and this is something that Pastor Tim and I have talked about a lot just in the past, is that, and when we talk about community, it's something that just cannot be manufactured, and what we've seen is that as people begin to grow and really invest in one another and see one another, not because of the color of their skin or what job they have or what zip code they live in, but because there is an understanding that it is Christ who brings us together. There's something that's happening, and so when people come, I think they sense that there is people that truly care about one another, a desire for people to grow, and I would say in a lot of ways we try to keep things simple. We don't we don't have a ton of programs or things like that. Actually, we've the way that our service structure is, it's pretty much been that way from the start. We've when we started the Well, I think there were some things that we were doing in terms of the service and things like that, but in a lot of ways the foundation is still there, so nothing has really changed in that regard. And I feel like there is, once again, a desire to just be faithful to the call that God has given to us, to continue to be loving and serving other people, and for those people to continue to live out the gospel, for all of us to live out the gospel together. And so for me personally, the Well has been amazing, in that sense, and obviously no church is perfect, but we've been so blessed, and so we're so thankful and to be able to serve together, to serve the Lord, and to serve one another. So
all right, the Well Community Church, Sundays 10:30. I'll put the link there at the bottom. All right, and I put the address. Thank you guys, appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Oh.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
I ain't really changed like I thought I would. It's like another day in the good. Laid back sipping, sun rays on the pad. Ain't no worries when you're winning, ain't no way to be mad. Cookout vibe, got the whole fam present. Life is a blessing, thankful for every second. Best foot forward, I'm too